Welcome to The Real Game, a podcast by coaches for coaches. I am your host, Matt Philbrick. All right, welcome back, everybody, to this episode of The Real Game. It's great to be back and recording today. I have on with me today the head men's basketball coach from Cedarville University, the home of the Yellow Jackets, correct, Coach?
Yep, that's it.
All right, so why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe just give us a bird's eye view of your coaching career and what you're doing now there at Cedarville.
Okay. Yeah, my name is Pat Estepp. I'm the head coach at Cedarville University. I've been here for 24 years now. I was an assistant for 8, and then been the head coach, just wrapping up my 16th season. So,
Fantastic.
Yeah, I graduated from Cedarville in the late 90s. I got 2 kids that go to Cedarville. I love this place. Love what it's about. And
you've been there for 24 years, so you better love it, right?
Yeah. Yes.
So did you play basketball there when you were a student, or
just on the JV team? I was a walk-on back then. Yeah, my dad was a high school coach for 27 years, so
okay,
I grew up in the gym.
Yeah. Where are you from originally, Pat?
Southern Ohio, near a little town called Portsmouth. I'm from a town called South Webster.
Okay.
It's about right off the Ohio River, down near the tip. So.
Okay, awesome. Well, I thought it would be great to have you on this episode. For one thing, you're coming off of winning a championship there, the NCCA, which is National Christian Athletic Association, and you've won. I think, is this your 3rd championship since you've been coaching there at Cedarville?
Yeah, and the NCCA. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's fantastic. Congratulations on that. That's a big accomplishment. I thought that one episode that I've been wanting to do is kind of developing a championship culture and mindset. And I thought you coming off a championship there at Cedarville, obviously you're doing something right, and you should be able to speak into this a little bit. So I thought you'd be a great guy to have on here. So having said that, let's kind of dive into the topic here. I know I sent over some questions to you to look through. In your opinion, Coach, what are some characteristics or traits that you believe develop a championship team or championship mindset?
Oh, that's a big question. I think for us, we're an NCAA Division II school as well. So we've had, it's not like winning any kind of championship is easy.
Sure.
But for us, it's always been a little bit of a reset because it's a team that maybe didn't get into the NCAA tournament. And we were really close this year. We're probably two more wins and we're probably in.
Yeah.
So, for us going from there, the disappointment of that, and then kind of resetting your mind, almost like an NIT team would, or a team in a postseason tournament,
right,
to, hey, we got basketball still to play. We can go win a championship here. How do we regroup and do that? But, I think in terms of creating teams that are championship caliber teams, number one, you have to have talent. You're not going to win games if you don't have really good players, and you're not going to, no matter what you think of yourself as a coach, we're all better coaches when we have better players. That's the reality. But there's a certain hunger that you have to have within that group, and selflessness. I think you see that on display even in the NCAA tournament right now. There's guys, that I heard one of the coaches say it a couple weeks ago. I can't remember who it was, after one of the tournament wins. He's like, we don't just, I think the teams that we've had that have won those Christian college tournaments or won our league, or they're teams that were really tight in the locker room. They can set themselves aside and play for their teammates. And this group maybe as good or better than any team I've coached did that. And, I think that's a characteristic. They're guys that are hungry. They work really hard. they got guys that were willing to put in the time in the weight room, in the off season, outside of practice, even to make themselves as good as they can be. And then you got to catch some breaks. God's got to give you some. I don't know whether God cares we win or lose, but there's some breaks that we have to get along the way to win a championship and have a good season. And
Yeah.
We were fortunate with those this year. But, I think probably big characteristics are you got to have talent. You got to have guys that are selfless. You got to have guys that are tough, guys that persevere, guys that have short-term memories. You can't be living in the past and a mistake. And it's the same with coaches. We can't do that either and make our guys live in the past. We
Right.
got to coach. You got to make them better, but we also got to help them move on to the next play and not just keep venting about something that happened 3 minutes ago.
Sure. A couple things that you said, Coach, stand out to me. Obviously, you mentioned you need to have talent to win. I agree 100% with that. There isn't a coach in the universe that would say they could win without talent. It's funny because my college coach used to say you can't win the Kentucky Derby if you're riding on Eeyore, and I think there's a lot of truth to that. The other thing was the selfless part. I spoke to on one of my episodes a sports psychologist, and I asked him what in his experience what the earmark is of a champion, and the first thing he mentioned was selflessness. Everybody he's worked with that's a champion caliber athlete, even at the professional level, it's all about team first and self second. So that's interesting that you bring that up. So you mentioned, having a short-term memory and getting over maybe the disappointment of not going to the tournament, the one that they wanted to go to. Athletes come in with all kinds of baggage or things that they have to work through in order to be their best. How do you, as a coach, help your athletes overcome some of those mental barriers or develop resilience in pursuit of their goals of becoming a champion?
Well, I think it's daily, for us in terms of how we try to approach that with them. Everybody comes in with their own goals, their own ideas of what their success is going to look like when we sign them and they come here as a freshman. They come in every year, depending on how hard they worked in the summer or didn't work in the summer with maybe different goals. And sometimes their parents' goals are different than our goals, and it's like, and so are theirs. So you trying to find a way to get those all kind of moving in the same direction. And we have a great group of parents that really help us with that. But you've got to find a way to get everybody heading in the same direction and nobody swimming upstream against you. So, I think for us, we do a lot of things off the court if we can. Especially in the preseason. There's some shared suffering that needs to happen, I think, in terms of just, hey, we're going to go through some hard stuff. We're going to create some perseverance in you guys, because you don't develop perseverance sitting on the beach. Like you're going to develop perseverance going through struggle together.
Sure. Yeah.
And that might be the weight room. It might be conditioning. It might be practice. And then we have them over to our house a lot. I think the unity that you can create with off the court type of things for your guys and serving, just putting yourself aside and serving, is all aspects of trying to get guys rowing in the same direction. So, for us, we do a fall retreat every year, no cell phones. We take them to a little church camp in Southern Ohio where I'm from. And it is one of the highlights of the year for our guys, and we do it really early, September, usually early October, and we take off, and it's kind of their time to really get to know each other. And it's amazing when you take their phones away how much they talk and interact and just
so
turn
their heads don't pop off. Their heads don't pop off when you take their phones.
They actually like it. By the time they're seniors, they like it. Their freshmen freak a little bit, and their girlfriends and their moms are worried about them. But no, we do that. We have them over to our house as much as we can.
Yep.
Especially over breaks. And we did it again this spring. I just felt like I coach better when I'm hanging out off the court with the guys. I'm not focused on what they're not doing well as much as I'm focused on who they are. We try to do that a lot. So, I think you have to have touch points with them, whether it's a lunch with a kid or with a group of kids or captains, and you have to have good player leadership. That kind of points me into that piece. Like, we have tremendous player leadership. Guys that disciple our underclassmen, we're at a Christian college, so that's a big factor for us.
Mm-hmm.
But also they lead well, when
Sure.
we challenge them like, hey, if we have a bad practice, that's on me as a head coach and on you guys as captains. Like, it's up to us to have great practices every day, and they do a good job of that. So I think in terms of creating that championship mindset or whatever, you got to foster some of those. Our values are toughness, selflessness, unity, and perseverance, and we have to find ways to make those things part of who we are, and get guys. I tell our guys all the time, your parents love you. We have tremendous parents that with our guys, but they don't care near as much about our team as they do about you.
Mm-hmm.
And they shouldn't. They're not parents to 12 guys. But there's going to be times where you've got to tune out the most important people in your life to keep rowing in the same and pushing in the same direction as your team, because they aren't at practice every day. They're
Right.
not in the locker room. They're not in. So, like, some of the things they think they see, they don't. And it's nothing against them. They love you. All right.
Mm-hmm.
But, I think our guys got to realize that there's times where you don't have, you can't, you got to tune out the most important people in your life because they're not there.
Right.
And
right.
you got to really trust your brothers that you're with, and trying to forge that locker room to be something that they want to fight for is what I think, have done a good job of because of our players, not something I've done. We just have a great locker room right now. And our guys sometimes will do that. They know, if I'm not playing them enough or whatever, like they can come in and talk to me if they want more or something. But at the same time, they're all about the team.
Mm-hmm.
And that has really, the last 2 years, more than maybe any other year, this group has been that way. And they've been a lot of fun to coach.
That's fantastic. You mentioned distractions a little bit, and, whether the distraction is coming from home or who knows, there could be a plethora of things going on in a kid's life, right? Between relationships and studies and all of those things. What do you do? What are some strategies you employ to keep your guys focused throughout the year on those goals that you mentioned that they set at the beginning of the year? It's a long season, right? November to mid-March or October to mid-March.
Yeah.
So it's a long season, and it's certainly easy to maybe fight discouragement and to lose your focus a little bit. So what do you do to keep that focus on track?
We don't talk much about the goals after the beginning of the year.
Okay.
We spend most of our time on the days. Like, let's get better today. Let's enjoy the day. Let's enjoy our time together, because this is fleeting. And the guys know it who have been around. Like, and the season, as long as it is, it's kind of like raising kids, where they say the days are long and the years are short. And basketball seasons are the same. The days are long, the seasons are like that. And, I think trying to get them to enjoy it, to stay, locked in together, to really cherish their time together is a big part of what we do. And it keeps them from worrying too much about things they can't control. Mm-hmm. And I'm not there's periods of time in a season where I'm not good at that, because I'm coming in, we've lost 2 or 3 in a row, and I'm watching film and I'm going into practice upset, and I'm not letting them let go and move on to the next day, and it's easy. All of us coaches like to use the phrase next play, but we don't let them do that sometimes, and I'm guilty of that. So I think having key captains that will call you out as a coach, like our captains have the freedom to say, hey man, you need to, like, you got to move on too. Like, it's not just us.
So, definitely.
We have, it's still, it is that willingness to set yourself aside for your teammates. And for us, it's tough because we're in a high school where you maybe went to school with these kids your whole life. Like, you got 4 years with them, and you're bringing in a new crop of freshmen and transfers every year. So you're trying to forge a bond really quick. And that happens with stuff we do, but it also happens with our leadership in the locker room. And our guys have been tremendous at that.
Awesome. You mentioned, you know, and I see this in my own self when I coach, and I've talked about this in multiple podcasts. It just seems to come up over and over again. But when we encourage our players to go out and play confidently, what does that look like? And to me, it's them going out and playing without the fear of making mistakes. And sometimes that fear comes directly from us as the coach. So we want them to be confident and we want them to play that way, but then we make them feel a certain way when they make a mistake. We make them feel stupid or, like they should know better, or we come down on them in a certain way. So it's interesting that you bring that point up. And it's good that you have guys on your team that can maybe help you refocus in that area as well as a coach sometimes.
Yeah, and staff.
Sure.
That's part of what they got to do with me. But yeah, confidence is fickle. And I think it's key to like you can't have confidence if you don't put in the work. Sure. And some of our guys that struggle, it might be because they didn't put enough time in the summer. And you just can't fake that. There's a lot of the game of basketball that just requires a lot of daily habits and work. And if you're not putting it in, you're not going to have the same confidence as you do, especially when you hit maybe a few game skid, where it doesn't matter what I say. If you didn't put the time in and the work in, you know it. And your confidence is going to be shaking quicker than somebody who's invested 6-7 days a week all summer. There's not much I can say to shake that kid. Like he really knows, hey, I got it. I've done it. And so, and for us too, it's trying to reinforce that. I don't want them overthinking. I want to build confidence. I've gotten better at that as I've done this longer. I was not very good at that early in my career. But I do think that we give guys freedom. We give them confidence to play in the way that they're capable of, with how we play offense and things we do. But they also, it's not a one-way street. It's not just something I can give them. It's something they earn by the work they put in.
Sure. Yeah, no, I agree with that 100%. You can do everything as a coach to put them in a position to be successful. But if they don't put in the work, like you said, everybody's going to know it sooner rather than later.
And they know it
first. That's a great point. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. So what do you do? So you have athletes that come, they work hard, to be better every single day. How do you balance pushing athletes out of their comfort zone? So maybe pushing them harder beyond what they think they can do, but have them maintain their well-being, their mental health at the same time?
Well, it's a tightrope to walk. I think there's so much noise in their life. And there's noise in our life too, but there's a lot of noise in their life.
Sure.
And trying to find ways to make basketball a little bit of a sanctuary instead of an added stress. That we talk about that a lot. Like this is not, it's stress because you want to do something with guys you love. There's pressure involved. You can't run away from pressure. But at the same time, it can't get overwhelming. This has got to be still fun. It's got to be a release, like it's a game, So we talk about things they can learn in the game, whether it's being selfless, persevering through adversity, having unity with a bunch of guys you don't really know until you get here. All of those aspects, I think, are important in their Christian life are also part of a basketball game when the stakes are pretty low. All right. It's wins and losses. It's not life. Not your marriage. It's not your job. So we talk about that. I just think you got to find ways for basketball to be the sanctuary for them to kind of turn all that noise off and just go have fun with their brothers for 2 hours or an hour and a half. And then we also, we're going to push them, but we try and keep a really good feel with where they're at. I've gotten better when a kid has a rough practice at asking, not all the time, but trying to do a better job of asking first why he's not having a bad day versus just jumping on him for having a bad day.
Yeah.
Because most of the time the guys care. It's just a lot of stuff, something going on in their life, and sometimes it's big and it's nothing. It's hard. So as they get older, usually freshmen won't come to my office, but normally juniors and seniors, when things really hit the fan for them, they'll walk in here because they know they can trust me. And I think that's important to develop that with your players.
Yeah.
And then you got to have feel. You got to know, like, sometimes your assistant coaches want to go, 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 go. And you're like, nope, we got to go short today. No contact. The guys are wore out.
Yep.
I have a rule, like, if I'm tired, they've been tired. So there's days where we just cut practice. We don't do contact. We go 45 minutes and we're out. I think you have to be more aware of them now than you did 10, 15 years ago. I don't think you can practice as long as we did 10 or 15 years ago. I don't think you can push them quite as hard as often. You can push them hard. You can't maybe do it as consistently hard. You have to go 2 or 3 days on and then back off for a day and then go another 2 days. So there's an ebb and flow to how you have to develop those things in a team throughout the season.
Okay. And that's the one thing I was going to ask you was, do you feel like guys feel the liberty to open up to you frequently when things are going on in their lives? And you mentioned, maybe not the younger guys as much, but as they're there over a certain period of time and start to develop that trust with you, do you feel like they feel the liberty to come and talk to you when something's happening with them that might trickle off into the basketball court or in their play?
Yeah, I hope they do. And I've had enough juniors and seniors in the office, tore up over things that I think they do. They just don't, freshmen and sophomores won't typically do that. But eventually they know, hey, coach has my back and I can go tell him anything. But not everyone. You hope they do, but probably not everyone feels that way. So I think I've gotten better at that in the last few years. A lot better than I used to be as a young head coach.
Sure. So kind of wrapping things up here, can you give us either an example of or a story of a team or a specific player, whatever comes into your head, maybe that progressed as a season went on, that led to some great performance at the end of the year, or maybe contributed to winning a championship?
Yeah, we have quite a few of those guys, but we had a couple seniors. Our best player, Javon Moffmer, was he's an he's won more awards than nearly any player I've coached here at the Division II level. But two guys that I thought just really wrapped their career up well were two seniors, in Chris Rogers and Grant Wisman. And Grant was one of the best shooters I've ever coached, and he just had a rough year shooting the ball. Just didn't shoot like he normally did, but he averaged almost, I think, 17 or 18 a game in the Christian College tournament and was a big factor in us winning. Wow. Chris Rogers averaged like 20 a game in that tournament. And just to see those guys kind of finally tap in, and Chris has had a really good year, but he tapped in. He just kind of cut loose and played, and Grant did too. So those are two. And then our bench, we had some guys on the bench that struggled throughout the year, especially in the second half. And they I thought Kyle Thomas had a really good tournament. Timo, our kid from Poland, that's a freshman, had a really good tournament. Our freshman point guard had a really good season, especially for a freshman. And Ethan Sellers, I thought some of those guys that kind of came off the bench that maybe had a roller coaster of a year finished well, and you love to see that. So
yeah, sure.
We had quite a few guys, honestly, that I was really proud of for the way they finished the season, and that's what we talked about all year. With this group, I just thought that word finishing well, or phrase finishing well, was big for me throughout the year. I don't know, God put that on my heart for them and for me, but we had a chance to do that, and I was really proud of them for doing that.
No, that's awesome, and I love that term, finishing well, and that certainly can be applicable not just to sports, but to our lives as well, right? In our spiritual lives, our lives with God. Certainly, in the end, what we want to hear is, "Well done, thou good and faithful servant." Those are that's the ultimate goal. Coach, I appreciate you being on here today. It's been a great conversation. Even though I don't know you really personally, I feel like I know you a little bit better now, and maybe got a little bit of a peek into your philosophy there at Cedarville. It seems like you're doing good work there, and certainly work that is going to have eternal rewards for you. Keep up the good work. Is there anything you want to say to wrap up today?
No, I appreciate your time, Matt. Thanks for the kind words. I got a great job and work with great people and great players, and I'm privileged to be here. So
great. Have a great day, Coach.
You too, man. Thanks.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode of The Real Game. It was an honor to have Coach Pat Estepp from Cedarville University on today and talking about developing a culture of champions. And one thing that stood out to me was when he talked about hard work and preparation, especially in the off season. So I'd like to leave you today with this quote by Michael Jordan. And the quote is this: champions don't become champions when they win an event, but in the hours, weeks, and months and years they spend preparing for it. So good luck, coaches, and coach on.